Hello Redditors, welcome back to Tales Against Humanity. Now, let's get started. In today's episode,
one person cost over your 20 million nobody notices as time goes by. I worked within a government department and a particular IT job was tendered for. As with such contract, public or private, they lack an amazing amount out information. So you quote a price way above what is mentioned, as it is a pig in a poke. Company I am working with is awarded contact. They were a good company and they could do the job. Except there was one issue: the overall project manager was not experienced in IT projects, as in no experience. Due to government policies within the civil service, she had been promoted and somehow temporarily promoted again for this role. Her supervisor was retiring within a few years, and this plays a part. I had met her a few years earlier and mentioned she was a bit odd and unstable from my interactions to a senior manager, so said make sure you get her to write it down, as she accused people of editing notes in the past. Noticeable issue I had seen with her. Interactions with others. Anyway, she is in charge. A plan is shown to her and she complains about the coloring more so than anything else. I am just sitting in the back amazed. This is what 20 plus listen to for 30 mins of color complaints. She agreed loads of firm dates by the end of the meeting. Many of which mean she is going to be really busy because every firm date has a clause of their deliverables. One manager thinks this is great, but myself and another manager say we are doomed. She has no ability to deliver what she promised, so our deadlines are useless. Basically, retiring manager warns her, we warn her, other PM and her sister also a PM, etc. She goes ahead. A month to her first deadline, we ask how is it going? Hasn't started. Point out the 2-month plan to do it. Claims she will throw people at it. 2 weeks later, hasn't started. Week later, no start. 2 days beforehand, it is delayed by a week, blah blah. 6 months later, we get it. Parts of project continued, but we are already 6 months behind. All goes on in a similar fashion. So 2 years late with the project that was estimated at 1 year, 3 years total. We don't think it is ready, but the press section already announced its arrival. Those live no major teething problems like it falling over, but the rates look a little high. After 2 days, a month's worth of normal payments have gone out. Major flag waving, and PM says it is just the backlog of suspended payment during the transfer, and we say that it is way more than expected. She says ignore it. 4 mouths payment out in a week, we warn her again and she says ignore. We contact her boss's boss and he nearly has a heart attack. Pause payment and see major flaw and look up issue and report on said flaw from 2 months earlier. End of the day, so much money went out in so many diverse ways, it was going to be very costly to recover. So it was just written off. There was public inquiry about why they paid so much for software rewrite and delays. The report took so long to come out, and it was a busy news week, so ignored. In overpayments, she cost at least your 20 million and your 6 million in IT, which people were more upset about for a moment and never told about the overpayment issue. She left that department and was promoted into another government department. I will say she was not totally to blame, but certainly the cause. Basically, every support she was given got so annoyed with her they said go ahead and do what you think is right then. Somebody should have told her no, but it was just easier not to bother. And her retiring boss was sort of key. People complained and warned, but he didn't care. Seeing your tax money wasted is upsetting, but hearing friends complain about how you are paid too much and overcharge the government for work when you do, knowing the facts, can be grating. Story 2. Crappy internet is IT fault. I worked for a company that was going through a period of growth. We asked to be brought into the conversation early so that we could determine if there was high-speed internet in each new location. The CEO applauded the CFO about finding a cheap place to establish a remote office. The guy even got a bonus. Every single time, the best we could get was 1.5 MB down and up. And everyone had issues with these locations working nights and on weekends because it was scary as fuck. I had someone from a different part of the business complex scare off someone who was trying to break into my car. I had enough. I sent an email to the CEO stating that every single location was presenting an unsafe place to be at night, when many people were returning company vehicles or equipment. I included the statement from the guy that caught someone breaking into my car. Also, I included the fact that it was never included in the search for new offices and the only option was slow connections. Yeah, everyone was afraid of the CFO because he fucked with their budgets if they pissed him off. The CEO came down on the CFO and asked for clarification. CFO admitted he didn't think IT needed to be involved in site selection, but he saved the company a lot of money on rent. At the end of the day, we were stuck in office leases, but from that point forward we were involved in the selection of new offices. From then on, I knew the CFO was gunning for me, but he couldn't do anything overtly. I left about a year after that. Not that I was worried about getting fired, I was thinking about going into management. Which I did. The CFO was my boss. Story 3. Sometimes, you do something that makes you realize you know your job. Small background, this place had what they called L1, L2, and MAC teams. L1 was phone support, L2 did the on-site / more involved tickets from L1, and MAC was the move/add/change team. They did install / moved equipment / etc. Everyone rotated through once per week, i.e., you were L1 every 3 weeks. 2 of us were hired on at the same time, so during training, I was on L1 for 2 weeks, L2 for a bit, and it was a good month before they put me on MAC. The other guy started on MAC and swapped with me after a few weeks. The guy training me, and later friendly coworker, and I were sent out to install a temporary network switch in a conference room that was going to need a handful of VoIP phones and laptop computers. We arrived with the crustiest 10/100 Cisco 48-port switch. They didn't need fast, and he plugs it into one of the 2 available network jacks in the room. Switch lights up, then when he tests it with our laptop, can't get access to the network. A little fussing, and we see the activity light isn't active on the uplink. We try the other port. Maybe that one has an issue. Same thing. I don't recall how I came to it, but I asked if we used BPDU or similar on our network. He'd never heard of it, and I wasn't a network admin, just reasonably familiar due to playing around with gear since I was in my early 20s. I would have been 32 at this time. I explained the best I could, remember, not an SME by any stretch, about what port security was, and he called it a favor to one of the network admins asked about it. Turned out that, yes, we had port security and a single MAC address limit. So the switch was fine, but when you plug in the laptop, it'd trip the security and shut down the port. They opened it up, and we were good. After a week, I was on normal rotation. A few years later, I was talking with him, and that first day came up. I think I mentioned how the other guy had like 3 weeks of training, and I had only 1 week. That was when my friendly coworker told me, yeah, I went to my team lead and said, we don't need to train him. He already knows more than I do. So they taught me some of the specifics that week, but just let me get on with it afterwards. Turns out that the other guy got so much training because he just didn't get it, and still didn't get it. Then, finally kind of gave up and stuck him on phones. Story 4. It's definitely not the file format. I built one of my AP clerks a flimsy little process to split vendor PDF by invoice number and then use a couple of Excel sheets and some AutoIt glue to look up data and rename the files. It saved her about 5 hours of mindless tedium a week with about a 45-min investment from me. She'd been using it happily for about 3 months and then it quit working. What's odd is that it ran just fine on my PC. So I'm remoted into her PC looking around, and she tries to help me but she's just annoying me. Could this be caused by the server outage last week? No. This is hosted on a completely different machine than the server that was down. So they're not related. I noticed there's a file in there named the same as the program I click on but the extension is 03. Maybe that's the problem. No. That's just the AutoIt source code. It's always been there. You just haven't noticed it before. One of the Excel sheets says it's an Excel file and the other says it's an Excel 2007 file. Is that why it's not working? No, that's no the issue. One is a 2007 file because that's just how it comes out of the accounting system. Excel can open both files just fine. It's definitely not the file format. Well, after a couple of hours fucking around with AutoIt, which can be a little weird sometimes, I decide to convert the 2007 file to an XLSX file. What do you know? It started working on her PC again. Fuck. Now, I gotta endure a few months of her reminding me about the time she figured out a problem before me and how she should really listen to my advice in the future, because she is a very intuitive person and can sense problems easily. Gonna be a long few months of biting my tongue.